This conference will now be recorded.
So,
Mm,
Mahesh, what
yes,
did you
yes, yes.
try? Which?
Yeah, this was for load balancer. But, yeah, auto scaling, I was able to create the classic and the application. And when
Auto
it comes,
scaling is not classic or application. Auto scaling is a different concept. Classic and application is load balancer.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was confused. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Auto scaling, I was able to create, and only thing
Hmm.
is, I couldn't. What I did is, initially it was like messed up in the sense that concept was not this one. I tried with minimum was starting with one instance, and desired was two, and every time adding three. So it was a bit confusing, but it was working. Then later I created another one with minimum one, desired one, and auto scaling one. So and the grace period was 1 minute, so within a 1 minute, so I was able to see another. Once I manually deleted the ec2 instance, I went to instances and deleted, so immediately within a minute the another instance was triggered, and it was created, so it was all good.
Okay.
Yeah, but this load balancer I got a issue, like uh, maybe once you're free then we'll do it, because here all the port and tcp I was using the proper port numbers and everything, still it was not. But if I use the http at, then it was working fine.
So, what was the problem?
So in that what happened, so we are getting this out of service one, right? So we came to
Hmm.
know that, okay, if the security group is not correct, like security
Hmm.
group, it says that ssh 22, but our port is here http 80, so definitely we are getting the out of service. So the security group should be perfect. So
Okay.
in this what happened, I changed the TCP in the inbound rules, all TCP, and protocol is TCP, and port is 0 to 65,000 whatever.
Hmm.
And in the listeners, I used TCP 88, and instance protocol is also TCP, and port is 88. But
88.
still, yeah,
88 is what? 88 is not a
is
correct port. It
HTTP.
should always. No, it should be 80.
But it
Right?
will allow us to update, right? So I tried to update.
Okay. So, say you might have updated it. Okay, it
Yeah.
allowed and you updated it. The problem is that the EC2 instance that is running the service, and for our use case, the service that the EC2 instance was running was HTTPD, which is an Apache web server, right? The web server runs on port 80. So if
Okay.
you go and change the port from the load balancer size, and I believe you change the health check port to be 88,
Which
right?
one?
Now,
Inbound
health
rules
check,
I changed.
uh, inbound
Inbound
rules,
rules.
security
Yeah.
inbound. Okay.
Yeah.
So you change it to 88. Now the
Yeah.
problem is that there is nothing running on port 88 on the server. The server is running a service on port 80. Your security group allows 88. So
Okay.
it's not going to help out. It's like you opened the main door, but somebody is standing on the balcony to be let in. So it's not going to work, right? He will not be able to come in until you go and open the balcony door because he's standing there, right? So if a service is working on port 80, you should allow port 80 and not 88, or for that matter, there are 65,000 ports. You should not open all the ports and close the port where the service is working.
Yeah. But how, where I can change the server 88? It is not allowed, or it is fixed on server port 80?
No, it is allowed, but that is like then you need to know how Apache works, how the configuration of
Oh, okay.
Apache is set up, right? So you can change it to anything, is
Okay.
except the standard ports that are there. You can always change a default port, but the default is 80.
Okay. So is it we can change while doing this creation of this EC2 or somewhere? No.
No, so okay. EC2 has no, so you created a server EC2, okay?
Correct.
You have a server. Then you installed Apache, right?
Uh,
This is what we did. This is what we did. We created an EC2 and then we installed Apache on it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we installed Apache, by default Apache is running on port 80,
But
correct?
Apache, I didn't do any manual installation. I didn't use any user data or anywhere. Just
Then it
created
is
it.
then it is not going to work no matter what you do. So the concept of a server being healthy with a load balancer, that there you need to define a health check. The health check, if you don't define, it will take the default health check that is running on port 80 and it is going to check on port 80. You don't have anything running on port 80, the health check is going to fail.
Yeah. This easy to health check where I can check then because I can do it only in the security group, right? Inbound and outbound rules.
What? There is no. So if you're not installing anything on the EC2,
Yeah.
let me share my screen. So your issue was, I'll come to your issue. I won't go anywhere else. So your issue was you created a load balancer
Yeah.
and then you attached two EC2 instances to it, right? That
Correct.
was your issue. And your EC2 instances were not healthy,
Yeah. Correct. Out of service. Yeah.
correct? Out of service. So you remember there is a health
Yeah.
check that is
Yeah.
defined in the load balancer. What is this
Yeah.
health check for? What is
Yeah.
this
This
health check
one.
for?
Yeah. This one. What happened? Easy to. Here we have this file index.html which will be
No, no,
stored
no,
in.
no, 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 no. Not so. This health check is to check the health of what? The load balancer or the EC2 instance?
This is of EC2 instance.
This is to check the health of the EC2 instance, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Now, this part, what do you understand by the first 3 points?
Yeah, in this one, it will check the HTTP and port 80. Not only this one, but again, it will check the file, which is index.html, and it will see whether this file resides in that TC2. And if both are exist, then it will say it is healthy.
And how this will work? How this will reside on the EC2 instance?
Yeah, this is by default.
No, this is not by default.
I think here also I changed TCP 88. I tried so many options.
Change it to TCP. So
TCP 88.
it is
Yeah,
still wants something to be running on port 80. Yes.
yeah, okay.
And so my question is, how will anything run on port 80 on the EC2 instance if you are not installing Apache?
Okay, okay. No, but Apache I didn't install. Just it was
That
that
is
is a
what I am
second.
saying. If you don't install Apache, that means there is nothing running on port 80, right? There is
Yeah,
nothing running on port 80 because you did not install Apache. So if you did not install Apache, port 80 will return no response, right?
yeah,
This will
okay,
return no response. So what will happen is a request will be sent. It will wait for 5 seconds, send a
yeah,
request again. No response is coming. So after two tries, it will mark it as unhealthy. So you will
okay,
have to install Apache to for the instance to be healthy.
okay.
The same thing we discussed last time also. You had the same question. So same thing I explained.
No, this unhealthy, this out of service will come only after once we do this load balancer, right? Apache installation will come the later second stage.
What second stage?
So
What is the
once
second stage?
second stage in the sense once we connect via this SSH, then yum install HTTPD, those that time
Hmm.
we are installing web service. But here to get this in the first itself, it was out of service. Just you can I changed here TCP, then 88, then I did all some. I think here the healthy threshold I put 2. Then in the security group, I created a TCP 88, not only TCP, it was a port 0 to 65,000. Then also I was getting this out of service.
Where did you did 0 to 65,000? There's no option to 0 to 65,000. I don't see it here.
No, in the security group, when creating this
Uh,
inbound and outbound rules, I
okay,
have to make sure this.
Mahesh. Try to understand what I'm trying to say. Okay. Okay. So you change this to TCP, and this say this is 80 for this example, right?
Okay.
This and what this means, that is clear to you. This means that it will access the server on port 80. It will access the server using TCP protocol on port 80. Fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And port 80 will not have anything running on the server by default. There is nothing running on port 80 on the server. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. There is nothing running. Okay. So what I'm saying is if there is nothing running on port 80 on the server, no matter what you do, the instance will be out of service because the health check is based on that port. It should get a response on port 80. If there is nothing running on port 80, the server is not going to come healthy no matter what you do, where you do it. Okay. So the first criteria is that your server should be listening on port 80. For
Yeah.
the server to be listening on port 80, what you need to do, you need to install Apache on the server. Until you install Apache on the server, it will not be listening port 80. And if it is not listening on port 80, it is not going to be healthy. As simple as that.
Okay.
Okay. Now that can be done once your EC2 instance is attached to the load balancer. You see it is unhealthy. Log into the EC2 instance, install Apache, and after some time this will become healthy. Or else, when you are launching the EC2 instance, you can use the AMI that we created for the class. You can use that to launch an EC2 instance. It automatically has port 80 enabled. So it will be healthy. Not sure?
Okay. Nope.
Try it out. So what you need to do is create an EC2 instance. In the EC2 instance, install Apache.
Okay. Using the user
Okay.
data, right?
Whatever, you can use the user data, you can connect to the EC2 instance and run the commands.
Okay.
I don't care. Apache should be installed no matter what.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, once Apache is installed, you need to start the service.
Okay.
Okay, you have the commands, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't have it, you can get from the last week's recording.
No, I have that.
Okay.
I'm
So
running.
yes, run the commands. Once everything is running, okay, copy
Okay.
the public IP of the EC2 instance and paste it on the browser and hit enter. You
Yeah.
should be able to see, you should see a test page.
Yeah. Yeah. Correct. Correct.
Once you
We
see
are
the
using
test
some
page,
instance, one instance, two, that all I did.
leave aside everything.
Mhm.
Just install Apache, start the service. Don't create a page. Okay.
Okay.
Now, when you paste the IP on the browser, you will see a test page.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Once you see the test page, then this EC2 instance, if you connect to a load balancer, okay,
Okay.
don't change any port, especially not 80, especially the
Okay.
health check port. It should be 80. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Then it should come up healthy.
Mhm. Yeah, that's why once I was not getting this TCP, then I terminated all. Then I used the existing HTTP. I was able to see that it was working. That's why I
No,
posted.
if you don't install Apache even with HTTP, it is not going to work.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can guarantee you that. So you need to install Apache into it for
yeah.
that to work
Using
on
that
port
user
80.
data, I did that one. So then I was able to see that one. It was in service both. Even I tried to change the security group other than HTTP, only SSH. I was getting in service that.
Okay. Okay, try this out. It is
No.
going to work. Okay. Any other questions, anyone? No questions? Okay. So if no questions, okay, how many of you tried the scenario that I shared in last class? How many of
Hello,
you
hi
remember
Rishi.
the scenario that I shared in the last class?
Hello, hi Rishi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried all and it went successfully.
It went successful. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Anybody else tried and it worked?
Hello, Sasi. This is I'm here
Yeah.
for the first time, so
Okay,
I didn't understand what are you asking for.
that is okay. So you are here first time. You know that we have been we have done some prior classes, right? You are aware of that.
I know.
Okay, yeah, no issues. So if you that is fine. Others who are there since start, I'm asking those guys. Did you guys? So I know Neetu tried something. I know Mahesh tried something. I know Chinmay tried something. Chinmay was able to
Yeah, I
complete it.
tried. Yeah,
Others,
I tried.
you
Yeah.
were able to. I mean, if you're not able to complete, at least as you tried to do something and you got stuck, even that is fine. I'll help you out.
Hello. Hello. Hi,
Yep.
Rishi. Yeah,
Yes.
I also tried and I completed successfully.
Okay. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah,
So
and
let's.
Rishi, for me, na, I remember like all my past class for auto scaling, I have complete idea and complete understanding. But just for scaling, today I'll be trying. But still, we can proceed because I have complete understanding for last session. So, like, it's
Yeah,
okay
yeah.
for me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
Yeah. So before we go into S3, just to add a point, EC2 is so important, not only for the certification, but also for this entire course, and also for you for you to be able to say that you know AWS. EC2 is as important as you tell somebody that you can talk in English or you can read English. Similar to you knowing ABCD, EC2 is similar to that. If you go and tell somebody that you know AWS and he asks you what is EC2 or how autoscaling works and you are not able to tell, there won't be any second question like what else do you know on AWS. That is not going to come. EC2 is at that level and that important. The things that we did in EC2 should be so ingrained into your mind that you say you did a 16-hour office and then you went to a party and then you sleep at 3 a.m. in the morning. 4 a.m. your boss calls and asks you that okay, this is the problem with EC2. You should be able to tell him or her. Okay, EC2 should be that ingrained into you, and it is that important. Okay, so do practice out all the things that we did. Practice it like 100 times. Okay, so that it goes into practice, and EC2 will be something which will be always using in the course. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about storage. So what type of storage did we discuss when we were doing EC2?
Elastic block store.
Elastic block storage. Okay, so we have two other important types of storage. One is S3, that is object storage, and one is EFS, that is file storage. Okay, so block storage, where is block storage used? Block storage is used where we have to go and install applications, where we expect the server or the operating system to be able to talk to the storage at very huge speed, very fast speeds. Okay, there we go and use elastic block storage. Object storage, did we discuss how block storage works?
No.
No.
No. Who can tell me how block storage works? Any idea?
You have told like it will be divided into blocks, and as per the requirement it will be allocated, and it can't be reduced but can be increased if required by if more requirement arises from the instance like on the virtual
Okay,
machine. So it
then
can
we
be
discussed.
increased.
And
We
once
discussed.
the EC2
Who said
instance
no?
is deleted,
Yeah.
once the
Sorry?
EC2 instance is deleted, by default, whatever the data stored into that EBS will be deleted. You can't recover it back.
So that happens only when the when the block storage is also deleted with the EC2 instance. If your delete on termination is checked, then only it gets deleted. Otherwise, it doesn't get deleted. Right? Remember that? That was also the scenario.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So if we talk about block storage, and say for example, this is I'll say like this is 1 GB of storage. Okay, you took a hard drive or you took a storage which is 1 GB. In block storage, what happens is each block is divided into a fixed size. This size depends on your file system type. So if you are using a FAT32, each block will be divided into 32 kilobits of size. Okay, the size of each block will be 32 KB. Okay, so the 1 GB storage will be divided into 32 blocks of 1 GB divided by 32, that many blocks. Fine. Now, if you have to go and store, say, a file which is of 100 KB, how will that file be stored? This file will be stored, say, one block is here, the other block is here, another block can go here. How much is remaining? Another 4 KB can be here. Okay, so this is how the file is stored. A 100 KB file will be divided into smaller chunks and each chunk will be stored. Okay, now the first chunk will have the memory address of the second chunk. Like this will know where the second chunk is. The second chunk will know where the third chunk is. The third chunk will know where the final chunk is, where the final piece is. Okay. So each block will contain the data and it will contain the memory address of the second block. Second block will contain the data and it will contain the memory address of the third block and so on. Okay. Now, if some of you have done defragmentation in Windows, defragmentation is a process where each block of all the blocks of one file are pushed to one single location. Like this will be pushed over here, okay, this will be pushed over here, and this will be pushed over here, so that they are stored at one place or near to each other. Okay, this is block storage in simple terms. Now, what happens in object storage is,
Hello. Hi, Rishi.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but can you please ask all to please be on mute
Now
because I'm facing lots of noise
we are
other
facing
than
lots
you
of noise
also.
from.
Yeah, yeah. Now it's better. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so guys, if you're not speaking, just please be on mute. Okay, so background noise could be a problem. Uh, what was I saying?
You're on means like linking between that two chunks, multiple chunks in between data.
Yeah, okay. So this was block storage, or this is how block storage works. In terms of object storage, if you talk about object storage behaves in a different way. So say this is a big object store, okay, and I have to store a file which is 20 GB in size or 1 GB in size. So the file will be stored as one full copy or one individual copy. Okay, and this file will have some data associated to it. This data will be like, this will have a data associated to it, and uh, this will be a unique ID, and it will be some metadata about that data. Okay, so in block storage, a file is dumped as one standalone file, or one entire chunk of data is dumped on the object store, and there is some metadata associated with it, which is like the unique ID with which the file is known in object storage. So say if this is a file named test, the unique ID for this file could be, just giving an example, could be something like anything. Okay, so if you go look for test, the object store will recognize the file with the name of this and some metadata about the file. This metadata could be, say, for example, who is the owner of the file, or maybe what is the content of the file. Okay, maybe it could be the type of file. Okay, this can be some default metadata, or this can be defined by the owner of the file, that this is the metadata that has been associated with the file. Okay, so object store, there is no fragmentation. The file is stored as a standalone uh, entire copy of itself, and it gets associated a unique ID and some metadata. Now, the advantage of this type of storage is that here you can go, this is generally used to store files which are large in size. When I say large in size, so large in size is a relative term. A 10 MB file can be large for you, a 1 terabyte file can be small for me. Okay, depends. But generally this is associated with files wherein say log files are associated, or there are some video files, or there are say tar files, zipped files, okay, something similar. So these type of files, and especially files which if I'm accessing and I'm not able to access as fast as I will be on a block storage, such data or such files are pushed into object storage. Okay. Okay. Now Amazon S3 is an object storage solution from AWS, and AWS says that S3 can store virtually unlimited amount of data. Okay, so when I say virtually unlimited amount of data, so that means there is no limit. That is what Amazon says. So to just give you a small example, I have worked with clients, at least a few of the clients. I have worked for customers, a few customers of AWS, okay, who had petabytes of data. So one customer had 500 something petabytes of data. There was another customer who had like 800 petabytes of data. There was another customer with 100 petabytes of data. Okay, so one petabyte is 1,000 terabytes. Okay, one petabyte is 1,000 terabytes. So if you say 500 petabytes, that is 500,000 terabytes of data. Okay, so if you go and buy external hard drive of a terabyte, you will require 500,000 hard disk drives to store that data. Okay. Okay, and so 500 petabytes, 800 petabytes, and 100 petabytes. That is 1400 petabytes. That is equivalent to 1.4 exabytes of data. Okay, and these are three customers I'm talking about with whom I have worked. There will be numerous customers who are storing terabytes of data. Okay, so just to give you an idea, like S3 is that big or that huge. Okay, another important feature about S3 is that the durability of S3 is this. So let me count. How many nines are there?
11.
11 nines. So the durability of S3 is 11 nines. Any idea what this means? The availability which AWS says for S3 is
Highly durable.
99.9%. I understand it's highly durable, but see, they write this or they write this. For the end customer, it means same, correct? Why write 11 nines for durability? Why push for that number? Why give that number? So if say an AWS engineer comes and he starts explaining to a customer that we provide this much of durability, the customer says, what is the difference between this and this? How are you going to explain him? So this means that there is a chance of losing one part of your data in a million years. Okay, so there is a chance of losing a part of your data in a million years. Okay, so these numbers, they actually come from this something called as sigma 6. Some of you might heard sigma 6, sigma 7 or sigma 9. Heard about these numbers? What is sigma 6? What is sigma 9? Any ideas on that? Never heard about them? None of you? Google it out. Okay. So this is something similar to that. Okay. So S3 offers 11 nines of durability, and this we are talking about S3 standard. Okay. 11 nines of durability. If you have to store anything on S3, there is something called as a bucket that is required. So you have to create a bucket in S3 to be able to store something which is similar to a Windows folder. Okay. A bucket is similar to a
Okay,
Windows folder.
sorry to interrupt that. Can I ask something?
Yeah, sure.
Can we store any kind of file in S3 bucket?
Yes, you can store any kind of file in S3.
Okay.
That was the question.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So to store anything on S3, you have to create a bucket which is similar to a Windows folder, and you cannot create a bucket inside a bucket. Not possible. Okay. Then S3 standard offers some sub, or S3 offers some other services or other types of S3 storages also. Like the first one is S3 standard. Then we have S3 IA. We have S3 one zone IA. We have, this is deprecated, S3 RRS. So deprecated. Okay. We have Glacier. Okay. And there is something called as S3 intelligent tiering. Okay. So S3 standard is the default S3 that we get. We have S3 IA, that is S3 infrequent access. We have S3 one zone IA, that is S3 one zone infrequent access. We have S3 RRS, that is S3 reduced redundancy storage, which is now deprecated. So it is no longer available. We have S3 intelligent tiering, and we have Glacier. Okay. So each serves a different purpose. Let me explain them. So S3IA. S3IA is again offers the same durability. So durability is same as S3. Availability 2 is same as S3. So I'll say availability is same as S3. Okay. The change with S3 standard is that in S3 standard, you are not charged for data access charges. Like if you go and try to download something from S3, you are not charged for it. Here, you will be charged whenever you are trying to access something. Okay, so the charges will be for storage and data access charges in S3I. Okay, this here, the storage is cheaper than S3 standard. Okay. Another thing, let me just simply explain over here. So cost wise, if you see, S3 is the costliest. Then we have IA is there. I don't think we can do that. So second in line is IA in terms of cost. Okay. Then we have S3 one zone IA. So I'll call this as one zone I. Then we will have, then it was RRS, but it is deprecated, so we won't talk about this. Then we have Glacier. Okay, and intelligent tiering, I'll explain like what is intelligent tiering. I'll explain about that. It is not especially a kind of storage, but how it works. So cost wise, this is the costliest, then this, and then Glacier. Okay, Glacier is used for archival. Okay. So here you pay for storage and data access. Storage is cheaper than S3 standard. So what happens is, let's take an example. So when a file is pushed freshly onto S3, say you generated some data and you stored that data onto S3. For the first month, there is a high chance that you will be accessing this data very frequently, maybe 10 times a day, maybe 20 times a day. Okay, because this is freshly generated data. So it will be required a number of times during the day. Okay, and you will be accessing it many times during. But say after a month or two, the chance of you accessing that data that frequently is going to reduce. Okay, maybe now you are only accessing it once a week, maybe once in 2 days, maybe once in 3 days, maybe once in 10 days, quite a possibility. Okay, after say 6 months, the chance of you accessing that data decreases further, maybe once a month, maybe once in 2 months. And after 10 months, you know that that data you won't be requiring anymore. That data is useless for you. Okay, that you know for sure. But the government says, or the organization says, that if you have this type of data, you need to store it for the next 7 years or next 5 years. Okay, let's take an example which is closer to us. Okay, once we leave a company, say I resigned from the company and my last working day was on 30th March. Okay, now in the next 2 months, there is a chance that background checks will be happening. Okay, the new company which I joined will be requesting the HR of the old company for my details, maybe some personal background checks, and my final settlement and all. So my data will be my details, my data will be accessed by the company quite frequently. Probably every other day they will be accessing my data due to some or the other things. Okay. Okay. After 2 months, the chance of they accessing my data decreases a lot. Okay, because all the background checks, all the final settlements and all would have happened, but there is still a chance that somebody might request for my data. Okay, maybe my background check did not complete, or maybe something happened. Somebody still can request my data. Okay, so but that chance is very small. Now after 6 months, the chance of somebody requesting for my data decreases a lot, and after 1 year, they know they don't need my data anymore. Okay, but for compliance reasons, due to the different compliance that are there, they are forced, the IT companies are forced to store my data for at least 7 years. Okay, why 7 years? So again, government rules, ISO compliance and all that, different compliances are. Okay, so in this scenario, what happens is, for similar data, for 2 months, my data is pushed into S3. So it is stored there. It's being accessed quite frequently. Okay, so the only charges I am paying are storage charges. Okay, after 2 months, my data can be pushed to S3 IA in infrequent access, because the data is important and it needs to be accessed immediately, but I may be accessing it maybe once a week. Okay, depending on who is requesting for the data. After 1 year, when I know that data is not useful for me, but the compliance says that you have to keep the data for 7 years, what we'll do is we'll push the data to Glacier. Glacier is the cheapest object storage service and it is used for data archival. The only challenge with Glacier is that if you store anything on Glacier, to download that data, you will have to wait for 3 to 5 hours. So as soon as you go and store your data into Glacier, and if you have to download it, you will have to wait for 3 to 5 hours for the data to be available for download. Okay, storage is, excuse me, storage is very cheap. You have to pay for every request of download that you make, okay, but you have to wait for certain amount of time for data
Hello,
available
Rishi.
for it to be available. Yeah,
Your voice is breaking.
is it breaking for all of you?
Hey, hello, hello. Hi, Rishi. I'm not able to hear you from last 5 minutes.
What?
But
Nobody was able to?
I was able to hear.
Okay. So how many of you were not able to hear me for the last 5 minutes? Only one?
अब बीच में ब्रेक हो रहा है.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm also facing same.
So that could be a problem for your internet. Okay. So see, the good thing is that the recording is fine. I don't think there is a problem with the recording. Okay. So say in case you miss like somebody missed 5 minutes, so you can always go back to the recording, which I think is being shared, and hear about it. Okay.
Okay, okay. Yeah, Rishi. Yeah, please continue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Uh, yes. So Glacier is used for data archival. Okay, and anything that is stored on Glacier takes at least 3 to 5 hours for it to be available for download. Okay. Coming back to OneZone IA. Now OneZone IA is, as the name says, that here. Okay, another thing which I missed over here, data is replicated in at least 3 zones. Okay, so any data that is stored on S3 is replicated in at least 3 different zones. Okay, this is why we get this. Due to this, we are able to get this. So you might go and search the internet. S3 has never lost a customer's data. Since S3 became live, it has never lost customer data. Okay, the availability had been an issue. Like last to last year, Virginia was down for 6 hours. Okay, but there was no data loss even in that 6 hours of S3 being down. Okay, that happens because data is replicated in at least 3 different availability zones. Fine. Now, with OneZone IA, it means that there is no replication. This does not happen in this case. So for OneZone IA, okay, durability is 99.99% only. Rest everything is same. Availability is same as S3, 99.99%, but the durability decreases. What this means is that now the chance of you losing data has increased by a lot. Okay, this means by the way, in plain English, that you can lose a part of your data in 100 years, which is still a lot more durable as our current storage solutions. Okay, this means that you can lose your data, maybe part of your data in 100 years. Okay, quite durable, but still the chance of that happening has reduced from 11 nines to this. So OneZone IA is mostly used for data that can be regenerated easily. Okay, data that can be regenerated easily, or data that is something which is not very important. Even if you lose it, you don't care about it. Okay, something similar to like thumbnail images. What are thumbnail images? You have the main image, but what you do is you create a small size image which is exactly same as the bigger image. So to give you a preview to your customer or to somebody, he gets an idea, okay, this is the image and this can be enlarged to a bigger size. Okay, so you don't actually care about the thumbnail. You can always regenerate it, or even if it is lost, you still have the main image with you. Okay, something similar. So data which is reproducible or data which can be regenerated, data that is not very important, such data is stored in one zone. Okay, one zone infrequent access. Okay, Glacier we already talked about. Glacier is a data archival service where data is pushed for longer, for storage, like if you want to store for more than an year. Okay, if you want to store data for unlimited amount of time and you don't want to be bothered about losing data or paying too much for the data, that kind of data is pushed into archive. Okay, any questions up till now?
No.
No.
Okay, so to store data onto S3, what is important? We need to create a bucket. Now bucket names are unique. Unique as in, like if I create a bucket which is named as test, nobody in the entire AWS will be able to create a bucket name test. In fact, I will not be able to create a bucket name test because it says bucket name already exists. Let me go back and show you. I don't have a bucket name test, and here it is global. That means I can see all my buckets which are from any region across the globe listed down over here, right? So in the entire AWS ecosystem, in the entire AWS S3 ecosystem, one bucket name cannot be repeated. It is going to be unique. Why it is unique is, say if I go inside this bucket and I select this, okay, check this out. The URL for the object, is Elastic Beanstalk, US East 1, this, till 9. This is the name of the bucket. Elastic Beanstalk, US East 1, 177, till 49. This is the name of the bucket. Okay, S3 Amazon AWS.com / this is the name of the object. So every object that is created or every bucket that is created gets a domain name associated with it. So if a domain name is associated with a bucket, okay, domain names are unique. Imagine I created a bucket name test, you created a bucket name test. So these are two domain names, okay, which have different contents. So that could become a problem. That is why you can never create two buckets with the same name. Okay, okay. So I have two buckets. Let it be. What I'm going to do is I'll create my own bucket. So I'll say my class June. Okay, where the bucket needs to be created, which region. So I'll create in United States. There are other regions also. You can create anywhere where I want. You will notice that some of the regions are not enabled. Any idea why? Like Africa, Cape Town is not enabled for S3. Any idea why this is?
Availability zones.
No. If there is a region, every region will have at least 2 availability zones. That is not the case. So sometimes what happens is some of the services of AWS are not available across the regions. Okay, so S3 is still not available in this region. That's the only thing. Okay, so buckets can be created in regions. Yes, I'll create this in US East 1. I'll scroll down below, there is advanced settings, object logs and all. Not doing anything, and we'll say create a bucket. So now you will see there is a bucket created which is named as, it also says successfully created bucket. You can see view details, it will give you the details. Okay, so my bucket has been created. Now once my bucket has been created, I can upload or download data to this. Okay. I can create a folder in a bucket, but I cannot create a bucket inside a bucket. That concept is not there. So if I have to create a folder, I can say create a folder, give a folder name, maybe test. Folder names can be anything. Okay, it's only the bucket name that is unique. Once you are inside the bucket, you can create any named file. There's nobody stopping you. Okay, so a folder can be created. I'm not creating a folder. Okay. Let's upload a file. So I'll say upload, add file, and I will select like say home.html, any file. I'll say next. So as soon as I say next, it gives me the owner details, what permissions the owner has. It gives me an option to add access to another AWS account. So I can say add account, and I can give say your root account email ID, and I can say that okay, this other account has read or write permissions or full permissions. I can define that. Okay, this is where I want to add give access to the objects that are stored in my bucket to another AWS account. Okay, okay. I can make this bucket public by the drop down. This is not enabling. I'll tell you why it is not enabling. Okay, I can allow objects of my bucket as public. When I make the
Rishi,
objects of, yeah,
one question, Rishi. Actually, you told like we can assign another AWS account. It should be only our root account, or we can assign somebody else account also.
no, our root account already has the full
Somebody else
access.
AWS.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is
it already
it.
has.
It clearly says right access for other AWS account.
Yeah,
Your
other
account
means
anyhow,
any other. Mm-hmm.
yes,
Yeah.
other. Your account so
Mm-hmm.
anyhow it has by default access.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
then
Yeah.
I can say make this object public. Making this object as public is anybody who has the URL of the object will be able to access the data, access the object. Okay, which we are not doing this. It says block public access settings turned on. So that means I cannot give public access. We will be doing it. So we will see how that happens. I'll say next. So here it is asking me whether this goes into standard IA, intelligent tiering. Okay, we did not discuss intelligent tiering. We'll discuss it right now. Standard IA, one zone IA, Glacier or Glacier Deep Archive. Okay, where I want to store this. For reduce redundancy, not recommended. This is deprecated, so we won't care about this. Okay, we'll discuss about intelligent tiering in a minute. So for now, I'm saying store in standard IA, which is frequently accessed data. It is stored in 3 availability zones, no minimum maximum storage, and nothing has been set up for this. Okay, I'll say next. Permissions and all it will say, and I'll say upload. So it says success. Success means the upload was successful. And if you now see, I have a bucket, I have a file which has been uploaded to my bucket. Okay. Now let me show you something else. Not sure how many of you have set up this. So if I say AWS S3 LS, I will be able to see my bucket which I created, which is my class June. And I can upload and download data from here also. That option is also there. Okay. It is not always that you have to use the UI to upload or download data. You can also use the command line to upload or download data or to view the data that has been stored. Okay, access denied, that means I have changed the permissions of the user, okay, which I'm using. So that is why we cannot access it. Let me just correct it so that we are able to access it. I'll go to IAM, get the access key ID and check it out. Hmm. Okay. Okay, not sure which user is being used. So I'll probably use this user's access key ID, security credentials. Okay, so I'm going to pause sharing for a minute. I'll generate new credentials and then I'll start it again. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I have changed the keys and now I'll run the command again. Now you can see the screen, right? Am I audible?
Yes. Yes, we can
Okay.
see.
So now I can see that this is my class. I'll say AWS S3LS and I need to see the objects of this bucket. Okay. So to see the objects of a specific bucket, the format is this. And now if I want to copy or upload or download something, I'll use the command cp. And if I do help, it will show me the options that are. Okay. So say I can run cp dry run quiet local path s3 URI or s3 URI local path or s3 URI to s3 URI. That means I can copy from s3 to local, from local to s3, and from s3 to s3. Every option is available. Okay, so try this out. See if you are able to make this work. Okay. Yes, no.
Yeah.
Try
Yes,
it
sir.
out.
Yes.
Okay. So I was able to upload one file. Uh, so you saw how it can be done from the command line. That command line only works when you have AWS CLI installed, which I think some of you tried, not all of you. Okay. So now the file has been uploaded. Let's see what all options are there in properties, permissions, management, and access points. Okay. Okay. Before going that, we notice we talked about S3 intelligent tiering, right? This, right? Now, intelligent tiering is an option. Intelligent tiering is an option which is used when you are not sure how your file is being accessed and you are not sure when that file can be moved to a cheaper storage so that you can save cost. Okay. Say, how will you know that this file is can now be moved to a cheaper storage? Okay, it becomes a bit difficult. Either you keep a manual track or you go and define a life cycle policy or something similar. Or might be the life cycle policy that you are defining is doesn't work in this case. Okay, so S3 intelligent tiering, if an object is stored in S3 intelligent tiering, is an option where it automatically keeps on moving objects from one storage class to another storage class to help you to save costs of S3 storage. Okay, so if I say if I upload an object into intelligent tier and that object is not accessed for 30 days, okay, nobody downloaded that object, nobody did anything in that object. So what will intelligent tiering do is it will automatically move that from S3 standard to S3 IA. Okay. Or if it is already in S3 IA and nobody accesses it for the next 90 days, it will move it from S3 IA to Glacier. Okay, automatically without your intervention. That is what intelligent tiering is. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Give me a second. I'll get some water and be back in a minute. I'm back. Okay, so let's see. So we have uploaded the object. Let's see what are the different options are with properties, permissions, management, and access. So we'll go to properties. We see there are ton of options. Okay, let's start with versioning. So, okay, before going there. So I have a file named home.html. Yes. Now say after a week, I did some changes to this file and now I uploaded the new file. So I'll select this. So this file which I am uploading, imagine that I made some changes to the code and I am uploading this file. Okay. So what will happen? This file will be uploaded and this will override the old file. Like this file, if you see the time, this was right now uploaded. Okay. What happened to the old file? It's gone. It's overwritten. So if you go and see the latest version, this is only what you see. Fine. What if you want to keep the older versions also? You want to keep all the versions of the file that were once uploaded. Okay, so you have to enable versioning. If you say enable versioning and click on save, now if I do the same thing, okay, now this will keep the latest file and the older file also. So if you see, this was uploaded 4:39, this was uploaded 4:38 p.m. So we have both the versions of the file. By default here it is the latest version, so if I download I get the latest version, but I can download the older versions of the file. I can delete also, say I want to delete, so I can do that, but I have all the versions of the file which I will be now uploading to. Okay, so this is versioning. Versioning is enabled if you want to keep all the versions of the file or all the versions of the objects that you ever create. Fine.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Server access logging is, if I enable this, this will store logs. This will store server access logs of any access that happens onto an S3 bucket. So I can say that store my logs in S3. Okay, logs that are created, ideally it should be different. So this, if I enable it, that means anything that happens on this bucket will generate a set of logs. So all the logs that are being generated for this bucket, I'm storing in this bucket, and in a folder, I can say that's /log. Okay, and I can say save. So anything that happens now in this bucket, any call, any uploads, any downloads, any new additions, any listing, all that happens on this bucket generates a log, and that log will be pushed into this bucket. Okay, that is server access logging. There is another object level logging also, we'll come to that. But if I want to capture all the activity that is happening on my S3 bucket, I can use this. I can enable this and then start storing logs for it. Okay, ideally, you should never store the logs of the same bucket on the same bucket. Like this should never be done. I'm storing the logs of the bucket in the same bucket. Okay, so like it says, if you, when your source and target bucket are same, additional logs are created for the logs that are written to the bucket. Okay, so that we should not do. Okay, always create different, always use different bucket to log the logs of a different bucket. Okay, this is server access.
Or just 1 second, Rishi. Or can we create one particular bucket for just logging purpose for a particular
that
server?
is that is how we do it. So there is
Okay.
normally a bucket is created which is only used to store logs,
Mm-hmm.
and when we enable
Mm-hmm.
server access logging, we use that bucket to store logs of all the other buckets.
Okay. Okay, Rishi. And for versioning, is there any tool available here to see the difference of two files, like on the line online itself? Like we can do it
No, no, no,
after downloading. No.
no, you cannot
Okay.
see. It won't allow
Okay.
you to see the difference over here.
Okay.
So think about it, like S3 is only storage. You cannot even see the file over here, right? If you'll have to say actions, even if you say open, it will download it and then show you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So here,
What all actions we can do? Like actions.
you can open, download, get
Open.
total size. So you have to select this and then only you can do like change
Okay.
storage, change encryption, change metadata, add tags. Whatever is mentioned over here, that is what properties, permissions
Mm-hmm.
management. It will enable us to do the
Okay.
same.
Change storage what does it mean? Change storage? Yeah.
Change storage is like move from S3 standard to S3 IA or Glacier or something similar.
Okay. Okay.
Rishi, something about access logging. You mentioned that if the file name is like now my class June, we should not save into the same my class June. But other one, what was that other one you mentioned, please?
What other one?
Like you said, we have to create another file, then we have to move something you mentioned. I didn't get that. The server access logging.
Hmm.
Whenever we want to enable this server access logging, we should not do the same the name like our bucket name, right?
No, 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 no. So if you enable server access logging, the logs needs to be stored somewhere. Okay. When you say target bucket, that is where the logs will be stored.
Yeah, correct.
Log will be generated by AWS. The log file needs to be stored somewhere, right?
Correct, correct.
So that log file should not be stored in the same bucket. So if your
Okay.
bucket is this and
Yeah.
you are enabling logging for this, don't store the log there only. Use a different bucket to store the logs.
Okay. Then in that one, we need to have two buckets, right?
Of course.
Okay. 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 Fine.
Yeah. The third thing is static website hosting. Static, what is the static website? Any ideas? Any idea what is a static website? Anyone?
Which can run only on client side.
What
Fixed
do you mean
content.
by that?
Uh,
When you say it
means
runs only on client side, that means there is no server side. So if there is
though
no server side,
there is no data storage.
there is no data
Sorry.
storage, there is no data processing, nothing is happening, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
The
It will
content
simply
is fixed.
go ahead.
Uh,
Go ahead, please.
Static website has fixed content basically. So
It has fixed content, yeah. So
And no
I believe
interaction
as
from database. Yeah. No
no
interaction
interaction
from
with
database,
databases, it
server
has
and
fixed
all.
content. Yeah, there is no
Mm-hmm.
server component. It's only the client side
Yeah.
which is there. So if we
Mm-hmm.
have a website which is a static website, we can host it on S3. So S3 provides a mechanism where I can host a static website on S3. So yeah, I can say static website hosting, and I can say use this bucket to host a static website. It will ask me what is my index page. Index page is the first page which gets opened when my website should be accessed. Okay. What is the error page? Error page is if my website is not accessible, it should give an error page. So you need to define that. So let's say my index page is home.html and my error page is error.html. Okay. So my website link will be this. Using this, I will be able to access my website and I can say save. So that's it. My static website hosting is done. Now I only need to upload the pages on this bucket. So for now, I have only uploaded home.html. I have to upload all the other pages that are part of my website. There could be hundreds of pages. It may have images, it may have media, it may have whatever. Simply upload everything onto S3. Make them public because S3 because if you are making enabling it as a website, it should be publicly accessible. Anybody should be able to access it, right? If it is private, nobody will be able to access it. Okay, so make it public and then only it will be accessible. So we'll try it out. I've copied the URL. Let's open the URL and see what. So I did this and it says forbidden, access denied. Any idea why this happened? Anyone?
Seems like permission issues.
It is a permission issue. So the permission issue is like this file is not public. This file is not public. So let's make it public. So I'll select, I'll go to actions. There is an option to make public, which is not enabled. See, this is not enabled. This is enabled, but this is not enabled. So I cannot make it public. What could be an issue? So the issue is while creating the bucket, let me go back and I'll show you. So I'll say create a bucket. I'll give it a name. While creating the bucket, this was the scenario: block all public access. So by default, a bucket blocks all public access. So this needs to be enabled, right? So I'll go back to my bucket and I'll disable this. I'll disable block public access so that I can make my files public, which is in permissions, block public access. I'll say edit and remove this. So now I can allow block is removed. I'll save, yeah, confirm. Okay, now if I go back, select this, click on actions and say make public. See, so it says success. That means the file is now public. Okay. I'll refresh this and it gives me the page, right? So again, like we did in an example with EC2, that was a single page, or we tried another one which had multiple pages. This is a single page website, but you can always upload any number of pages which could have any type of content, make everything public, and your website will be accessible by this link. Static website hosting. So this is the link which will enable your website, which will allow your website to be accessible. Okay. I'll disable this. Okay.
So this enable and disable will be chargeable, and means if we keep it enable, it will be charged.
No, there is no charges for static website hosting. The only charges are for data that is stored in S3, and then how many GET requests are coming. So the number of time the data is being accessed, those charges, and the charges of data store. Static website hosting, there are no extra charges.
Okay. Okay.
Then we have an option of object level logging. Okay, what is this? So object level logging is, first of all, what happens is, whatever we do on our AWS accounts, everything is logged, everything is recorded. How it is recorded? It is recorded by a service called as CloudTrail. CloudTrail. This is the service which records everything that happens on our AWS accounts. Whatever we are doing, either from command line or from SDK or through the console, everything is done through API calls. Okay, every click is an API call. So CloudTrail records all the API calls. So if I have to store those details, if I have to store those logs in this bucket, I will say I'll first have to create a trail and then select it, and then I'll say record what events. I can say read and write and enable it. So it will start storing logs of CloudTrail, which are nothing but all API calls that are happening in my AWS account. Okay, server access logging, this was to store the logs of one S3 bucket So if I enable it right now, it will be storing the logs of this S3 bucket, my class June S3 bucket. Okay. Object level logging is log all API calls that are happening in your entire AWS account, not only this one. Okay. So that is the difference. Server access logging is logs of one bucket. Object level logging is logs of entire activity that is happening on your account. Fine.
Yes.
Then we have
Yes.
something called as encryption. So S3 supports encryption at rest. Encryption at rest is once the data is uploaded onto S3, then it can be encrypted. Once a data is uploaded on S3, then it can be encrypted. S3 supports data encryption at rest. Okay. There are two ways to encrypt the data. One is key provided by S3. So if you see this AES 256 server-side encryption with Amazon S3 managed keys. So if you select this, the key is provided by S3. Okay, and if you select this, the key is provided by KMS, that is Key Management Service. Okay, so that's the only difference. Otherwise, it's same encryption. Okay, encryption is only done once the data is uploaded onto S3, and when you try to download, the data is first decrypted and then allowed for download. You can either use the default key that S3 offers, or you can create your own keys into KMS. KMS is a service. So I'll quickly show you like what is KMS. So KMS is a service which allows you to manage your encryption, decryption keys or public-private keys, key pairs, your certificates and all are managed by. So KMS, you can generate a key over here and use that same key to encrypt your objects. Okay, otherwise there is no difference. So encryption there, data encryption can only be done at rest, and encryption can be done in two ways. One is S3 provided keys, one is KMS managed keys. Okay, in KMS you can also upload your own customer key. Okay, so that option is also there. You can either say create a key, or you can go to customer managed keys and upload your own keys. So say create key or key actions. Okay, that also is there. Okay. This was about encryption. Then we have some advanced settings. So before I go that, I'll just open a page and leave it where I'll describe what that is. Okay. In advanced settings, there are options like object lock. Object lock is an option once enabled. It can only be enabled when the bucket is being created. I cannot enable it right now. But once this is enabled, I cannot delete objects from my bucket. Okay, so this is to stop objects from being deleted from your bucket. So when I say deleted, that means if I go over here, select my object and then say actions and say delete. Say delete. Okay, so if I have enabled object lock, my objects cannot be deleted. Okay, so that is the only change that happens. I can only enable object lock when the bucket is being created. Later on, it cannot be enabled. Okay. Okay. We have something called as tags. Tags, no matter where they come in AWS, are always the same thing. Add a tag is key value pair. I can say name, give a value. I can say owner, like who owns this, give a value. I can say project, like which project this bucket belongs to, and all that stuff I can add in tags. Okay, tags will always be same whenever we discuss about them in AWS. I'll come to transfer acceleration. Then we have events. So events is like if a new object is uploaded, I want to get notified. If an object is deleted, I want to get notified. If if somebody accesses an object, I want to get a notification, maybe an email, maybe an SMS notification. That is event. I can say add notification, notification name like send email, Okay, I can say that if there is a put, post, or a copy, or all object delete events, whatever I want, I can select that. Then send to whom, so I can say send to SNS topic, and then I'll select a topic. Okay, we'll discuss about this into SNS. So SNS is a service that helps to send email notifications, message notifications, HTTP endpoints, and all that stuff. That is managed by SNS. So I can send emails whenever put, post, or copy happens, whenever object create happens, whenever restore completed. So all these options I can select and send notifications to. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Events, an option is to get notified when something happens in your S3 bucket. Coming back to transfer acceleration. So transfer acceleration is, say normally if I'm uploading a bucket, if I upload a file to my S3 bucket, what I do is I go to overview, I upload, I select a file and I say upload. I again say upload. Okay, I add file and click on this button, upload. So it will upload a file. How the file travels to S3 is, the file is sent over the internet, okay, and it traverses all through the internet to where it is supposed to be uploaded. In this case, my file was supposed to be uploaded in Virginia region, so it will travel through the internet all the way to the Virginia region, and the file will be uploaded, right? When transfer acceleration is used, once I enable transfer acceleration, what happens is when I say upload, the file is uploaded to the nearest edge location, and from there it uses Amazon's own backbone network.
Hello, Rishi.
Was
Could not able
uploaded
to.
quickly. But imagine if I have a file which is like a few, sorry,
Sir, what you said is
somebody said something.
Your voice was off for 10 seconds.
For few
Yes,
seconds.
even I.
for seconds your voice was.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
But not clear.
Yes,
All of you can hear, right?
yes,
Too much.
but it's the voice is breaking in between actually.
Hello, Rishi. I am also facing problem.
Okay, not sure. Can you hear right now, or still there is some problem?
Yes, yes.
We
We can
It's
hear
Not
right
okay.
now.
yeah,
It's
it is clear.
okay for me.
Your voice is clear.
Clear. Okay, so whenever you face this breaking issue, right, stop me right there. Because sometimes, so see, the problem is this is a broadband, right? So sometimes it starts breaking into between. Can't do much there. Okay.
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 So although I have like two broadbands, but still we face these issues, especially on Saturday and Sunday. Other people who are using the broadband, they are watching videos, so it slows down my speed also. It affects that also. Okay. Yeah. So stop me whenever you face the issue, so that we can take a pause and then start when the
Okay.
okay. So I was saying that we are using transfer acceleration. Please mute. Yeah. If you are not using transfer acceleration, whenever I upload a file, the file traverses all the way over the internet and then gets stored to where it is supposed to be. As soon as I enable transfer acceleration, okay, as soon as I enable this, I only need to enable this. Okay, once enabled, now if I upload a file, the file will be first uploaded to the nearest edge location to me. And once it is on the edge location, it will then use Amazon's backbone network to get stored to the S3 bucket of my region. Okay. So how it, so to see the speed, the difference in speed, Like if I use a direct upload, it will be slower than transfer upload speed by 123%. That is more than double. So if I use transfer upload, I will be able to upload a lot faster as compared to direct upload. Okay, similarly, you can see the speeds for all the regions, and you will see for Oregon, for San Francisco, Frankfurt, every place, the transfer accelerated speed is faster, except like Tokyo, it is slower. Okay, Singapore, it's only 7% faster. So it shows the speed for all the regions that are there. And this is mostly used when you have to upload files which are like a few GBs in size. Okay, so that the files are uploaded at faster speeds and you don't have to wait for long to file to be uploaded. Okay, so transfer acceleration is the file is first uploaded to the edge location that is nearest to you. S3 will automatically select the edge location that is nearest to you, will upload the file to there. From there, it uses Amazon's backbone network to upload the file to your S3 bucket. Fine. Okay.
Yes.
We have something called as requester page. So requester page is an option where if somebody is downloading your objects or somebody is accessing your objects, the person who is downloading, who is accessing, the bill for the access for the data transfer is sent to that account. Okay, so say if I do this, so anybody who is now accessing will be billed for this. So say I have this file in my bucket. Okay, and somebody from one of you from the class is trying to download the bucket, download the object, so there will be a charge for it. For data transfer, charges will be there. Okay, so those will not be billed to me, it will be billed to you. Okay, this only works when the requester also has an AWS account. It will not way other way, it will not work other way. Okay, if you don't have an AWS account, this is not going to work. So this only works when both of us, like I am sharing my bucket with you, you are downloading it, so you will be billed for it. Okay, so works only when both of you have a AWS account. Any doubts on this page? Properties?
Once we enable object lock, can we disable it later?
Once we enable what?
Object level lock. Sorry, object lock. Down.
Object lock.
Yeah. Can we
No,
disable
I don't
it
think.
later?
No, I don't think this can be disabled.
Okay. So it's
Once enabled,
permanent.
it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Rishi, the one thing the requester page, in the requester page, the other one who wants to access your object, your executable file, so you should give permission to him, right? It is not that
Right.
even though I have that AWS account, I can't access your, if you give that open URL, I can't access unless I have that. You have to mention in the S3 bucket, okay, this account is allowed to access or something.
Correct.
Okay. Then if I access that file, then I will be getting that charge for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
In
So we'll now go
Rishi,
to.
this
Yeah.
just one question. In the properties, there is a server access logs. So can we download those log file and see what's been happening on those logs? Can we
Of
see?
course, if you're not able to download it, what's the purpose of logging, right?
Yeah, but there was a file, no? Can you go there because at that time you skip to the next topic, na? Then I keep it for later. Just enable logging, yeah.
Hmm.
We used to select one bucket for logging.
So I
Okay.
selected a bucket.
Mm-hmm. It's not a file name, no? It's a bucket.
Yeah, where the file will be stored. The file name will be auto-generated by AWS.
Okay, it will be auto-generated at the
Yes.
particular location. Okay,
Huh.
then we log into Putty and there we can see the file.
Nahin, not putty. So where you are storing in this bucket, right? You're
Hmm.
storing in this bucket,
Yeah.
correct? This is what
Mm-hmm.
you are doing.
Yes.
So how do we
Yes.
access the bucket? We don't use putty to access the bucket. We'll go simply to Amazon
Yeah.
S3, and here I can see
Hmm.
all my buckets. So I'll go inside my bucket and I'll download the file.
Okay.
So here is my other bucket. This is what I was selecting, right?
Hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Anything else? Any other doubts? No. Okay.
So,
Yeah. Someone was saying something. Did we again lose the connection?
no, sir.
No.
I
No, we
can.
can hear you. We can hear
Okay.
you.
So we'll go to permissions, and permissions, the first thing was block public access, which we already discussed, that if this is enabled, I cannot make my objects public. Okay. By default, all S3 buckets will block public access. They will not give you, but they will not allow public access till this is enabled. Okay. So this we disabled because we wanted to make one of our files public. Okay. Okay. Then there is something called as an access control list. Access control list is where it defines like who has access to what. This default is my AWS account. You can see it says your AWS account, that is me, and I have all the permissions. Okay. If I have to add another AWS account, I can say add an account, give your email address or canonical ID, and tell what access is needed. Okay, so this is to allow other AWS accounts to be able to access your objects. I can only say list objects, list permissions, or write objects and write permissions, depending on what you want. These are the 4 permissions that are required. Okay, I can make objects public. So when I'm making public, I can say like what public. So list objects or write objects. List is you can only see. Write is you can also upload. Okay, and permissions is where you can change the permissions also. Okay, so ideally when you are making something public, it should either be this or both, but never this. Okay, because here somebody can change the permission and remove your permission, the root's permission. Okay, which has happened a few times. So now your object is accessible to others, but you cannot access it. If this is removed, I cannot access it. Okay, so always when you are doing public, it could either be one of these. So if I save this, right, see this change to yes. Okay, I can remove this. So if I say this back again, I can make one change. So right will be gone. Okay. Okay. And S3 log group deliveries, which log groups will be able to upload or download, similar to what we were seeing in properties. So here I can also write this. So permissions are always same. Like ACL is who can have public access, who cannot have public access. So since this is enabled, see this. This is public. If I remove this, that will go away. This will go away. See this gone. Okay, so in whenever you are making your objects public, you should be very sure what you are uploading in the bucket. If you are not sure what is going to be in the bucket, this should never be enabled. It could become quite a security risk. Okay. Okay, number of times you might have heard news or read about some technical forums that somebody's data on S3 is public or is accessible to everyone. Okay, you might have heard a lot of times. So that is why AWS has now made that you cannot make anything public by default. So you first have to disable it and then make it. So those changes they have put in. Earlier this option was not. Okay, ACL was there, but this was not. Then there is something called as a bucket policy. Okay, so bucket policy, here I can define, here I can make fine grained changes. For example, say I want to make the objects of my bucket public. I want them to be accessible by everyone, but I only want these to be accessible to, say, people who are residing in the US, or this is accessible only to people who are residing, say, in India, or I can say not accessible to everyone, but not accessible to people who are residing in India. Okay, so if I want to make fine-grained changes, or if I want to restrict access to fine-grained things, or I can say that the objects can be accessed by everyone, but not with people who are coming from this domain. Okay, I will use a bucket policy for that. So if I say a generator, I'll show you how a policy is generated. This is also JSON, by the way, so you can use JSON to write it down. Okay, but let's generate a policy. So I'll say like this is an S3 bucket policy. What type of request? This is allow or deny. Okay, so I'll say this is allow. Principal is which S3 bucket? Sorry, who, for whom I am defining it. So let's say that this is an example for an IAM user. Okay, so I'll get an IAM user. This could be an IAM user from your account also, no restrictions, can be anyone. So I'll select an IAM user. Okay, I'll take this guy. So I'll copy the so I'll say this guy, allow something for this guy on S3, what action? So I can say that allow this guy create bucket, or maybe not create bucket, maybe say get bucket ACL, that this guy should be able to see what our permissions are there, get only, so he can only see, okay, on this bucket. Okay, so if I say add statement, I'll say generate policy. This is how it will look. And what this means is that this person, this IAM user, will be only able to see the access policies on this bucket. He won't be able to do anything else except this or for this bucket. Okay, this is similar to what you can do from IAM policies. Okay, but here instead of controlling it from IAM, you are able to control from S3. Okay, make sense or confusing? You can copy it from here and paste it here. Okay, once the policy is generated, it needs to be pasted over here for it to make effect, by the way. If you're not pasting it over here, it's not going to take any effect. Okay, similarly we can create deny policies. So we can say deny principal can be anything. Then what are we denying? I can say all services. Okay, first we define principal on services, add statement, and then it will be similarly generated. Okay, so just to give you an idea like how a policy can be created. This is an S3 policy, S3 bucket policy. Okay, generally used to fine grain the permission levels for IAM users, for other users also. So it has like tons of options where you can say where condition matches a specific IP. So deny anything that is coming from that IP, or deny anything that is coming from say this AWS account. So it has tons of different options that can be set up. Fine.
Yes, sir.
Then we have something called as CORS configuration. CORS is cross origin resource sharing. Okay, so this is mostly used when you are trying to access, say you have a website which is called abc.com, and now this website is referring some contents from the S3 also. The website pulls up say the images or the audio video files that you are using on your website. Those are stored on S3 for an example. Okay, so if those are stored onto S3 and you are trying to access those from the website, you will have to define a CORS configuration. Okay, like if the request is coming from this domain, what is allowed, what is not allowed, all that stuff is part of CORS. Okay, cross origin resource sharing. Okay, so these are all the options that are there in permissions. Okay, policies. Oh, so we haven't deleted this. We'll delete the policy, not needed for now. Okay, okay. We have management and access points remaining. Do you want me to continue with this, or you want to practice up till what we did and then continue with this? Okay. So in management, we will talk about life cycle rules. There is replication, analytics, and metrics. Now, what is a life cycle? A life cycle rule is similar to what we were discussing over here. So we discussed over, so we were discussing, right? Like after some point of time, my data can be moved to IA, then it can be moved to Glacier and similar, right? So a life cycle rule is where I can define, say I can give a rule name. So I'll say rule 1. I can say that apply this rule to all the objects in the bucket. I'll say next. Now storage class transition. So storage class transition is, I can say that add a transition and I'll say transition to standard IA after say 30 days or after 60 days or maybe whatever number, right? So I am saying move or change the storage class of my object as standard IA after 60 days. Okay, or I can say move to intelligent tiering after 60 days, maybe move to one zone IA after 60 days, maybe move to state Glacier after 60 days. Okay, depends on what I want to do. Say I know that after 60 days my, or this can be any number by that, move my object to Glacier after 365 days also. Okay, or maybe to Glacier Deep Archive. So a life cycle rule is a transition to a different storage class after a specified period of time. This can be the number of days that we decide. Okay, and once we do this, once I set this rule, so this will be like storage class transition object to standard IA after 30 days. It cannot be less than 30 days. So if I give 2, notice this, enter a value greater than or equal to 30. So I will have to keep an object for at least 30 days in standard. Okay. Okay. When I do next, here I can configure expiration. Expiration is delete objects after how many days. Okay, so here I am saying delete current version after say 60 days. So it will delete the objects after 60 days. Okay, expiration is deleting the objects after a specified number of days. Can be anything again, 150 days. Depending on again how so as an end user, we know like how the objects are, how many days we want to store it, after how many days they are useless for us. So we know all those details. So that is why we can provide the number of days. So this is setting up expiration, not mandatory. If you required, you can set it up. Next, it will show me the details. And if I say save, it will create the rule. So my rule says that transition to standard IA after 30 days. So after 30 days, whatever was stored in my S3 bucket will change. I'll show you what changes to standard IA. Okay, so if I go here, just to give you an example. So this says storage class as standard. So if I apply the transition rule after 30 days, this will change to standard IA. Okay, S3 IA, it will change to. So this is where you can see the change if you apply a life cycle. Fine. Any doubts up till now? We'll stop here and continue from here tomorrow.
Okay,
So
sir.
we have still a lot of things left. Don't want to rush.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay.
Sir.
Yeah, somebody I think was trying to ask something.
Actually, I want to ask about the previous classes lecture recording.
Huh?
Previous recording of previous classes.
Recording of previous classes. That is being shared, right?
Okay. I'll ask.
Yes,
It
it's
is.
yeah,
It is being
we have
shared.
some. Yeah, and Rupali also has like all the recordings.
Yes,
Okay.
she is the. You have to talk to her. She will share all those details.
Okay. Okay.
This is Mahesh and sorry, Manish and Mayur. No, I will share.
Okay,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Who has joined as a caller one?
Okay.
Who has joined as a caller one?
Hello.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Are you asking something?
Okay. I will share the recording with you.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Any questions, guys? Else we can break for today, and we'll see you tomorrow at the same time.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, no questions.
Okay. So people who have not
Mm.
practiced or who have anything remaining in EC2, please complete whatever is remaining in EC2. Okay, that is very
Okay.
important. That needs to be completed
Okay,
as
ma'am.
soon as
Okay, sir.
possible. And after you are
So,
done with that, try creating
mm,
an S3 bucket and upload or download objects to it.
okay. Rishi, the EC2 is completed or still there will be something more?
No, EC2 is complete. We have covered all the stuff that is there in EC2.
Okay. Okay.
Hello. Yeah. Sir, can I
Okay.
upload directly data to Glacier or any other standard?
Can you?
Can I upload a data or file to directly Glacier or any other standard?
You can upload anywhere. So while uploading, there is an option, right, where you want to upload. So you can select anywhere you want to upload to.
Rishi, one more query I have.
Yes.
In the root account, there is a billing option. I set up that billing option, but even I wanted to check for the IAM user. So I can see there is a IAM user activated for that. Yesterday afternoon, I activated that IAM user from my root account, and I didn't. Still, I was getting something went wrong, and no permission for the IAM user. Then I thought maybe it is a network issue. Morning I checked, still I was getting you need permissions. Why it is like that, please?
So if you give administrator permissions to an IAM user, the administrator permission and the root account, the only difference is that even administrators, they don't have access to billing. To give access to billing to an IAM user, you have to specially find the policy for billing and add that to the user.
Okay, because the account user right now I have only that IAM full access.
IAM full access, it will be administrator full access, right? Or IAM full access, so IAM. Rupali, आप mute नहीं है. So IAM full access anyhow clearly means, right, that you don't have access to billing.
Okay.
So to have access to billing, you have to give access to billing.
I'll check that permission and let you.
Okay.
Okay, I'll check that one because I was thinking this IAM full access means it is for including the billing. So I will see what
No.
permission.
So see, it's simple. Whatever full access says, only full access to that service is given. No access to any other service is given. It's as simple as that.
Okay. Okay.
Hello, sir. Can you please tell me where is that option, Glacier or Standard AI?
Where is what?
Glacier
Your voice is
optional,
not clear.
glacier
Glacier.
glacier option or standard I option. When
When
I
you are
directly
when
I
you are
directly
uploading a file, there it will ask you create a bucket and then go to upload a file. So when you go to upload a file, there is an option where it asks you which storage class you want to upload to. Okay. So when you are uploading the file, once selected, don't directly click on upload. On the right hand side, there is a next. If you directly upload, it will go to directly upload, right? Wait, I'll share my screen and quickly show you. Let me know once you can see.
Yes, sir.
So under properties, you can see this. So here you can say select Glacier, or you can say select Deep Archive, or you can select Standard IA, One Zone IA, and then do next. Okay. How I was uploading is I simply selected and clicked on upload. So it was uploading by default to Standard IA. But what you have to do is you have to say next, and then select that storage class.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And this, whatever we do, this create that ST bucket and was it chargeable, Rishi, or to some extent free? How it is?
No, S3 buckets are free. The data that is stored, that is chargeable.
But if we
Buckets are
create
free.
if we
Buckets
create the
are
ST
free.
bucket, but
Yeah, go
if we
ahead.
create a bucket, then we need to put, like you mentioned, some file, right? HTML file and all those. So
Okay.
we need to have it to see in the outside. So that's why I was asking.
So upload a small file, right?
Okay.
Upload a small file, test it out.
Okay.
Once you are done testing,
No.
once you are done practicing, delete the file. It should not charge you anything. Don't upload like a 10 GB file. So
Yeah.
if you upload a 10 GB file, it is going to charge you a lot if you are uploading a small file. So S3 charges you per GB per month. And I think it's 20 cents or 25 cents per GB per month. Okay. So 20 cents is like how much?
Yeah, got it.
It's a few 10 or 15 rupees.
Yeah.
Right. Per month. So if you store it for 1 day, 1 GB, it will be hardly like a rupee or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's try practicing. Try to complete EC2. Okay.
Okay.
Try practicing S3, whatever we did today, and
Okay, sir.
then we can continue from there. Okay.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you,
See
sir.
you. Bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir.